You know that thing that goes beep when there's like a national security alert? Let me just give a huge loving shout out and warning to people that think they're hiding secrets. It's not a matter of if you're going to get caught. It is when. It's not a matter of if it's going to be painful. It's how painful.
Right.
The church is great at getting people to not have sex until they're married. And then they leave them there.
Right.
And we don't talk about how to have sex after you're married. So you have a Christian community filled with a lot of couples having terrible sex for a very long time because nobody really speaks into it. It just doesn't happen, as much as it should. Hopefully that's going to change.
The last study that I'm aware of that was done was in 1991 that Pat Carnes did. He showed predominantly sex addicts came from emotionally abusive households. It wasn't just sex abuse equals sex addiction, but emotional abuse superseded the sex abuse. So it doesn't have to be like a one-to-one correlation for sex and sex addiction.
Okay. So if someone is listening and they know right now there's been sexual abuse in their past, what do you tell that person? Like, where do you go? What do you do? What's the first step?
Well, the first step is
really, really, really excited about this episode. I have the privilege of having a therapist that has radically impacted my life. Her name is Alex Katahakis, and we get her in this chair, and Laura and I ask her a lot, and she asks us some questions. And this one's so vulnerable that it was almost embarrassing when we were done. I was like, I don't know if I want all that out there, but that's our dedication. If we're going to do this, we're going to do it for real, and hopefully it's helpful for you. So we talk about addiction, we talk about sexuality, we talk about infidelity, we talk about some things that you might have heard about from a different angle. The angle that we take is one of like, we're in this thing, we've experienced a lot of it, and I know it's going to help a lot of people. And so that's what you got coming your way, Dr. Alex, and she's brilliant. Hope it's a blessing to you. Dr. Alex Katahakis, I nailed your name.
Yes, you did.
Let's go. It's such an honor to have you. We're blessed. We were talking just before we just cut this camera on a couple years ago. I didn't know what I was going to be doing, and I said, if I ever did something, if I ever had a show like this, you would be my first guest.
Right. I vaguely recall that.
And I've told myself I'm not going to cry today, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold it together. I'm going to try. But I definitely wouldn't be here without you.
Oh.
And I can explain some of our context,
Sure.
but there's been a lot of people that have helped us get through a really hard time. And the purpose of this podcast is to put people in a position to hear something that could change them. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's the position I was able to get in, sitting under some of your wisdom and counsel for so many years now, that I'm so grateful for it. And I am excited to share who you are with a lot of other people. So that is, that's the smallest thanks I can give right now. And I'll just keep it there, keep it casual. Otherwise it's going to be tears. But it's great to have you. Can you tell us a little bit about how you ended up here in LA? A little bit about your background, because you are brilliant. I like to call you a brilliant gangster. I don't know if everyone else ever calls you that.
Okay.
But the way that you operate as a clinical, is it psychiatrist, or is it more like, what's your title?
Well, I have a doctorate in human sexuality, and I'm a marriage family therapist. So that's my actual credential.
Marriage and family therapist.
Yeah.
And you started something here.
Yeah, I started the Center for Healthy Sex here in LA sometime around 2005, 2006. I think it's been that long.
Okay.
And how I got to LA is a very long story. I don't think we want to go there, but I will talk about how I started working in the field of human sexuality and sex addiction.
Yeah.
Is that a good start?
Yeah, and I'll give context to how I met you real quick. And Laura, you can hop in at any time. That's just your green light
right now.
So I left when you go to a rehab. They help you get like a plan once you get out. And I had a friend who said, "Hey, I'm going to help you find the best counselor, the best CSAT at the time, which we can explain later. I know her, very hard to get in with her, but I'm gonna give you her contact details. So the first basically week I was out of rehab, I was just starting to realize how unwound my life was.
Yeah.
And you don't leave rehab feeling good. That is a
right.
myth. You leave rehab going, I got a lot of work to do. And I was in total shambles, but ready to kind of change. And our first conversation was kind of like a feel out meeting to see if you even wanted to work with me, to which you initially probably said no. Because you didn't say no, but I had never been across from somebody who had the type of fierce advocacy that you employ, which is basically, you're gonna say the truth. You say it in your kind tone, but it was, it was rough. And I remember getting off the Zoom with you, and I told Laura, I was like, I don't think that she liked me. I don't know if she's
exactly what you said.
I don't know if she's gonna want to work with me, and she scared me. I was like, I don't know if I am strong enough to work with her, because you had said, tell me a little bit about yourself, and I started to talk, and you basically said to me, at one point, you asked me, you said, why did you take so long to tell the truth? And I was like, well, I did it for other people because I didn't want to hurt people. She goes, well, it's such a selfish thing to say because you've been hurting everyone the whole time you've been keeping secrets. And I was like, this conversation might be done. But that's kind of the way that you help people, is you're just not afraid to give the kind of truth that they need. And it definitely has changed my life. So that's how I met you. And so then you can take it back to where
Yeah, I
go.
would say that that's accurate, that my style of working with people, especially people that have been unbelievably hurt and traumatized and are wrapped in any kind of addiction, is to not waste time.
Yeah.
And to say, look, I'm here, I'll throw you a rope, I've got you, but I'm not doing your work. You're going to work really hard to get what you say you want. And you were quite disheveled when you came out of treatment. And I couldn't figure out if you were just like super arrogant, or you had never made an appointment for yourself before.
Bits of truth in both.
It was all of those things.
Yeah.
I was like, why can't this guy just call me back when he says he's going to call me back?
Yeah.
So, it's really meaningful that we can laugh about this right
Yeah.
now, because it was extremely painful at the time.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out, were you really going to step up? Were you going to meet me? Were you going to do the work? Or was I going to be chasing you?
So great news. BSide is ad-free. There is nothing worse than listening to an amazing something and then it breaks for some ad. I think anytime you can get a bunch of great things in one place, you got to do it. Like the BSide app, exclusive content, that alone is probably worth getting this. I mean, it's special stuff that we're going to do just for the BSide community. So that's on the app. There is community moments in an app like BSide that you really can't replicate anywhere else. It's pretty cool. So if you're somebody who's searching for community, friendships, or people of like-minded whatever, BSide is that. And we have a lot of great events at BSide, and you're the first to know if you have the app. So don't miss out on something because you didn't know about it. Get this app, and it's way worth it. So we love you. We want you to have the best. Get the app. I think there's a misnomer that therapy is coddling.
Yeah.
And people who think that have never been around somebody like you, it's the opposite of coddling.
Right.
And so for the 3.5 years that we have been in a relationship, we've done a lot of hard soul-searching work, and it has been the hardest thing I've ever, done. And for those watching, the way that I do some of my treatment is we have a group every Tuesday night from 7 to 9 that I have been a part of since I got out of rehab. And it's been like the pillar of my recovery. My kids know about it. Like one time I missed it and Roman goes, Dad, don't you have therapy tonight? I'm like, I do, bro, but we're gonna go out to dinner. And I already told everybody. He's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah. So everybody knows Tuesday nights, Dad is going out there and he's gonna do the work. And it's been incredible. I never would have thought that would have made sense for me because, that kind of setting, I just didn't think it would work for me, but it's the pillar of my recovery. So I'm grateful that you even let me in that group.
Well, it's been quite a journey for everybody. But yes, we know that addicts get better in group faster, more so than individual therapy even. So, but that's where I started, was running groups and working with men in 1998. Really when Patrick Carnes had just finished at Del Amo Hospital. It was one of many programs he'd set up, and there were just a handful of people doing this work in Los Angeles, and nobody had really heard about sex addiction. It was sort of this weird thing that nobody was talking about. And I was really interested in human sexuality. And it was the only internship I could find. So I just dove in head first and spent years, probably 8 years, working with men predominantly, helping them to get sexually, quote, sober. And there was a plan and a protocol, and we did it. We got a lot of people out of trouble, but there was no real place for them to go after that.
Yeah.
Like, no one understood how to be sexually healthy again, and I thought that was a real deficit, a real problem. So that's how I came to write my first book, Erotic Intelligence, and then I was just on fire and passionate about recognizing that this was a problem of childhood trauma. This wasn't just a bunch of men that were behaving badly or acting like jerks or looking for excuses. I mean, if you want an excuse to be a jerk, this is not the one to choose.
Right.
Choose something
Lord
else,
Jesus.
right?
Yeah. Choose a better excuse. Yeah.
So, but that's what really I was seeing. And so I started to do a deeper dive into understanding developmental neuroscience and looking at what happens from infancy to human beings when they're not attended to, and then what happens with later trauma, and why sex becomes the soothing mechanism versus drugs or alcohol. So for me, it's really been, an intellectual pursuit, a very passionate pursuit also, because I grew up in a family where my father cheated on my mother. But we didn't know what it was or if it was this or not. But there was definitely tension and pain as a result of that. And so when I see partners, for example, like my mother was always angry when I was a kid, and my father was warm and friendly and lovely.
Wow.
But he was the cheater, and she was being cheated on. But I didn't put this together till much, much later. And so I had sort of a front row seat, unbeknownst to me, about this whole constellation and how it works and the intergenerational pieces. And
let me ask you,
it's deep.
that term, constellation, something I'd never heard, and you use that in our group. And I was telling Laura about it today. Can you open that up for a second? Because first of all, there's so many things you just said that we could do 18 segments on. But even the term healthy sexuality, our background is church. We've led a Christian church for most of our lives. And even the title of your book probably got some Christians a little bit creeped out, like, oh, erotic intelligence. Like that word erotic is akin to a curse word in some Christian communities. And when you talk about like healthy sexuality, I'm not sure that we know what that looks like anymore, because it's not, there are some churches that are doing a great job, but in our experience, the conversations around sexuality typically stop at morality. This is right. This is wrong.
Right.
The church is great at getting people to not have sex until they're married, and then they leave them there.
Right.
And we don't talk about how to have sex after you're married. So you have a Christian community filled with a lot of couples having terrible sex for a very long time because nobody really speaks into it. And it's too embarrassing and too taboo to ask somebody like, hey, I've got some issues. It just doesn't happen, as much as it should. Hopefully that's going to change. But yeah, you said the constellation thing. Can you open that up for a sec? Because I've never seen brokenness or health in a constellation picture.
Well, a couple of things to that. We have no sex education in our country, and everybody's so terrified of sex education. So it becomes about putting a condom on a banana and don't get pregnant.
Right.
And this is the United States of America in 2024.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's something that so bizarre to me about this divorce of pleasure in the body, that we have these incredible taste buds and all these nerve endings on our back and the ability to feel and hug and touch, but we don't talk about down there, which is designed for pleasure.
Right.
So it's swaddled in this insane amount of shame.
Yeah.
And then we've got this crazy pornographic world going on in the background. So the split and the divide is really distorting, is what it is, because in a loving, I would even say Christian or faith-based community, we would embrace all of who we are, and we would scaffold our children to understand that this is your body and it's sacred and it's unbelievably pleasurable. And you should do it with someone that you trust, that you feel safe with.
So this is a huge moment for maybe parents to really stop and just hear what you just said. because I don't know, I don't know if we're guilty of it, but I don't know how many times until we were taught, to sit down and talk to our kids and say, your body has pleasure attached to it. God created you to have sexual desire and pleasure, and even addressing it like that.
Yeah.
That's not typically how Christian families go about it. I'm sure there's some that crush it, but most of the time it's like your body, you want to keep that off limits.
Well, yeah.
Until you're married.
Right.
Don't look down there. Don't touch down there.
That's
right.
Don't keep your hands out of
Keep your hands
like
out- don't
it's
let
just
anybody
how
else touch you.
talk to your toddler like that.
So
And I'm
you
like,
start-
they don't
you-
know.
yeah,
It's
so-
from
yeah.
your own perverted, like what you think is.
Exactly.
And parents are so afraid of it instead of embracing, hey, this is your body.
Yeah.
And you're exploring it.
You explore it.
Yeah.
And I think for especially Christian world, you're just told, like I know for me personally, like growing up in youth ministry and all of that, you're told sex is bad, don't do it until you get married. And then that's it. It's like, okay, now what do I do?
That's right. Yeah. And it's, I'm
And
sure
it's
it's
so,
terrifying.
yeah, it's awful.
Yeah.
And so then you have to explore it by yourself or privately, like trying to figure it out.
And you feel like it's bad right away.
Yeah. And so
Because-
you go into a marriage, like sex-wise, you're like, this is bad. Like but now I'm allowed to have sex. So it's like, okay,
Yeah.
what do I do now? Like,
Right.
Yeah,
so
but-
I think we've tried to, with our kids as well, like try to teach them about the other side, because I don't want them to have
Yeah.
that experience.
Well, even
you
the way
know?
I would tell my 14-year-old son, but you're going to feel stuff in your body, and it doesn't mean you're bad.
Right.
It doesn't mean
Yes.
something's wrong. Like when you have a girlfriend and your body starts talking to you, come talk to me about it. Let's talk
Sure.
about it. Like I can't force you to do it, but and I want you to jump in after this, but I think what happens, because there's going to be a lot of men watching, and I think the trajectory of the Christian man sometimes can be, we don't get a lot of sex education. You don't know a lot about your own sexuality, your own desire, your own anything. And if you don't get it as a teenager or a young adult male, you never get it. So then you start learning through porn.
Yeah.
You start learning through other ways. So you have a whole generation of men, maybe my age, I'm 45, that once you get to this level of life, when you have kids, you have a family, and you don't know what's inside you,
Right.
and you know it's going to break down at some point. You just
Yeah.
hope that the damage is going to be minimal. And I think that is something that I'm super excited about this moment, to say there is hope for people who have sexuality dysfunction. You don't have to live with it. It doesn't have to rule your life. It doesn't have to be the thing that takes you out. It's never too late to start learning about who you are in this area. We're going to reclaim it. And
Right.
because of people like you, we're able to give people wisdom and pull the frickin'
That lasted long.
that was so important. And pull the blanket off of what can be something that's really beautiful. So I'm excited about that day coming, because we're losing the fight right now.
Yeah.
We're losing it bad.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about scaffolding your
Scaffolding's a
son.
great word, yeah.
And saying, look, these hormones are coming online. Your kids are going to become sexual. It's evolutionarily and biologically directed.
Right.
And so you can either show them the way or just say to them, good luck out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what most parents choose to do.
That's
Yeah.
what they
Or
do.
they just
right.
hope it's not happening.
Yeah, well, they
and if you
pretend
are a
it's not
parent
happening.
hoping your kid is just steering away from sex, let me just burst your bubble. They're
Right.
steering into it. It's
Yep.
happening.
Yeah, and it's actually getting more dangerous for them because they're enacting what they see in pornography, and they haven't even gotten a chance to discover who they are, what
Yeah.
they like, what they want, what feels safe and good for them in a developmentally appropriate way. So that is the culture that we're swimming in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, then from there, I don't know where we are right now. I mean,
Yeah.
I could dive deeper into
it's-
that topic.
I was going to
but-
ask you this question about addiction. How do you know if you have an addiction? Because I was one of the guys who, if you would have told me I had any addictions, back in that stage of my life, I would have been like, I don't have any addictions. And then my life fell apart.
Right.
And then I found out I had multiple addictions.
Yeah.
And so if someone's listening and they have a check in their spirit right now because they're like, oh, maybe they have a private porn habit, or maybe they're doing things behind closed doors and they don't know what to do with it. How do you help someone know it's not just a little problem you have, it's actually an addiction you have to get help for? What are some of your signs for that?
Well, one of the simplest definitions is if a behavior is secretive, shaming, or abusive, it's likely addictive. So if you can't come home and tell your wife what you did today, then you probably have a problem.
If you can't come home and tell your wife what you did,
right,
you probably should check that thing that you're doing.
That's right. It's probably problematic. So if it's secretive, let's say, Laura, you and I are really good friends, and I shoplift all the time, but I never tell you, and you're like, great bag, great shoes. And I'm like, thank you. But I didn't say, oh, I shoplifted these from Saks today.
Yeah.
And you're like, great.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
Then I clearly have a problem because I'm lying about it, and it makes me feel ashamed, and it's abusive to myself or to other people. Preoccupation is another earmark of any addiction.
Can you describe preoccupation? This is interesting.
So when all you're thinking about is either getting into the experience, covering it up, or getting into the next experience, whether it's the experience of drug seeking, alcohol, sex, shopping, where you spend so much time in really a moderately dissociative state where you're just thinking about that. You're not present with your friends, your family, your coworkers, etc.
Yeah, that's the whole idea that you just described, that cycle. When I got to rehab, I realized I wasn't the only one who felt that, because it doesn't get better, it gets worse. That cycle that you just described, of especially if your life is responsible for other people, when you start thinking about how do I get this thing that I think that I need, and how do I cover it up, and then how do I cope with the shame?
Right.
And then the shame kind of leads you to another place. You're like, okay, I got to get that feeling again. How do I cover it up? I got to live with the shame. And it starts to destroy your life.
That is the cycle of addiction that you just described.
And sometimes if you can hold it out for a little while, maybe you get 6-7 months, but it's going to crash even harder. And that cycle is what I lived with, I feel like, most of my life to varying degrees. I don't know why I want to do this, but I'm going to do it. I got to cover this up. And now I feel like I want to take my own life. I'm so ashamed.
Yeah, the despair that comes.
And then the despair, and then you get back up again, and you keep on trying to get it done. And I think once you find out that maybe you have an issue that's deeper than, it's not a lack of prayer, it's not a lack of spirituality. Could there be something going on in your brain that is causing you to not be able to control your impulse? To the mean Christian, they say, that's not true. You just need more discipline.
Right.
To that person, I say, where did your brain go? At what point did you lose your mind?
Yeah.
Because there are moments that you realize in the path of an addiction where you're like, this is deeper. And you help me understand that the sexual addiction, the sexual abuse that I endured as a little guy, what that did to my brain and where that led, I just had no idea. And you really helped me look at that. I used to apologize for crying in meetings until you told me to stop doing that.
Yeah, stop doing that.
So I don't do it anymore. I'm not going to apologize.
We all cry.
No, but you helped me realize, hey, there's something that happened here, and we can unwind it. You can heal from this, but you got to know what happened. So can you talk about what happens to a child when they get sexually abused? Because the more I talk about my story, which I don't love to do, but I have an obligation to do. So people start coming out of the woodwork for us when it comes to infidelity, sexual abuse. I'll get a message from a man that's like, hey, I don't know what to do. I was abused as a kid. I've got these secret habits. What do I do?
Right.
But you taught me kind of what happens to your brain. So can you open that up a little bit? Because something happens to your wiring, and it's before you even had a chance to stop it.
Right. You know, even before I do that, for people that are listening, just before you had that moment talking about your childhood sexual abuse, just describing that cycle of addiction is so painful. People don't understand that the sex addiction itself is traumatizing because people are hurting themselves. They're weaponizing sex against themselves. The level of stress, the level of cortisol, adrenaline, it's exhausting on the human physiology. And when a child is tampered with sexually, it's a lot of data that's coming in through the central nervous system, right? Through all of our 5 senses. And when it's too much, the central nervous system uncouples from the autonomic nervous system, which is the body. So we have 2 nervous systems, essentially, the central, the autonomic, the brain, the spinal cord, and the body. Those systems uncouple, and that's how we think of dissociation.
Wow.
And compartmentalization is a feature of dissociation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So all addicts of any stripe compartmentalize. They can go do this thing, and then people like you say, what were you thinking? Or why weren't you thinking about us? And it's because there was no thinking on board in that moment.
Right.
Because when a child is being sexually assaulted like that, that system uncouples, and it's a really elegant system because it prepares us to die if we're really going to be, attacked. So we feel less, essentially, in the assault. But the part that's so challenging is that the child's also aroused because pleasure is pleasure.
Yes.
So the sympathetic nervous system is in a high arousal state. It's in a fight-flight state, which is also an erection or lubrication.
Right.
So if a woman is raped, she lubricates. Biologically, that protects her from being ripped to shreds. And sometimes women even orgasm and they have unbelievable shame about that, but
Right.
that's their body protecting
That's their
them.
body. It's not they're enjoying it. It's their body protecting them.
So the little boy is having this arousal state, this pleasure state, and it's confusing because it's gross and it's wrong and I'm going to get in trouble. And now sex is fused with that which is furtive and secretive and feels really good. And that is before puberty sometimes, but that is the beginning of an arousal template. So that same adult male can only feel like they can have sex that really turns them on when it's secretive, it's shameful, it's taboo.
What you're saying,
Right?
there,
High
yes.
intensity.
High intensity. Yeah.
And that's how the whole thing gets set up.
Yeah, in my experience, you'd have so much more, but when I got to, the rehab, 9 out of 10 guys had been sexually abused.
Wow, that's a lot.
That's a lot. And that's just my own personal sample size there. But the more that we open this up, especially with, I've worked with sometimes athletes in an athletic context, and sexual abuse is so prevalent that they didn't know it was weird. So a guy told me, I said, what was your first sexual experience? He was like, I was like 9, and some of the guys on the block pulled me into a van, and 13 of us had sex with this woman. That was my first exposure to sex. I was like, so that's horrific, traumatic abuse. He goes, abuse?
Yeah.
No, that's just how you grow up. I'm like, that's not how you grow up. And it's people understanding. I was one of the guys who even minimized my own sexual abuse because I was so conscious of other people. Like, mine wasn't that bad. You stopped me. And even out of rehab, I had to, it was bad. There's no levels with sexual abuse.
Yeah.
Like if it happens, it happens. And your situation's different than everybody else's. But typically people are like, that didn't really happen to me. It's just a part of life. In your experience, do most addicts have abuse somewhere in there? Is it more or less, or is that just...
I think that must have been somewhat anomalous for you because the last study that I'm aware of that was done was in 1991 that Pat Carnes did. He showed predominantly sex addicts came from emotionally abusive households. It wasn't just sex abuse equals sex addiction, but emotional abuse superseded the sex abuse. So it doesn't have to be like a one-to-one correlation for sex and sex addiction.
Okay.
That's
So if
interesting.
someone is listening and they know right now there's been sexual abuse in their past, what do you tell that person? Like, where do you go? What do you do? What's the first step?
Well, the first step is admitting it to yourself and also knowing that it wasn't your fault. You didn't do this. You were a child. Somebody assaulted you. Somebody took advantage of you, and you didn't know. And so to carry that shame with you into adulthood creates all sorts of distortions and problems. And so the first thing I would recommend would be to tell somebody.
Yeah.
Tell a trusted other, a fair witness. It doesn't have to be a therapist, but somebody that you know that is safe enough that can hold that for you.
Yeah.
And then to seek professional help so you can dive deeply into the pain because it's the diving into the pain, which is counterintuitive, going back and getting that child and bringing it into the present that creates a more integrated state.
Why do you think so many that are abused, and we tell our kids all the time. When they're little, no one else can touch you, and tell me if something happens. Like, this happens so much, and kids still don't. Even if you tell them, there's still things that happen, and they still feel that shame, or that, how am I going to tell my parents, or that wasn't really a thing. How do you help kids get to a place? Is that something you can do, or?
I think all you can do as a parent is, remind them that no one can touch their body but them. And if anybody ever does anything, they have to come to you, and that you love them no matter what, and they'll never be in trouble. And you just have to repeat it over and over and over again.
Right.
So that they actually know that and believe it, and they will come to you then.
I also wondered along those lines, especially again in the Christian space or whatever, when kids are told that sex is good or whatever, sex is for marriage or whatever, and then something like this, come and talk to me, or even in a conversation with parents or whatever, parents have reactions instead of listening sometimes.
Yeah.
And so that reaction that a kid sees in a conversation, or if they see something, or a parent's like, oh, that's gross, or blah, kids take that stuff in.
Yeah.
Do you think that also affects a child? I can't come to my parents, even though they tell me, nothing you do is, I love you no matter what, blah, blah, blah. But when they see a reaction from a parent that is counter to that, do you think that affects a child as well?
Yeah, I think they do. I think they see the parents' judgment, and it's usually the parents' own anxiety and their fears.
Right.
And so it's like saying, do what I say, not what I do. So the parents have to be congruent.
Well, it's also like a crazy selfish thought if you hear that your kid's going through something and your first thought is, what does this make me look like?
Like, exactly.
And I've fought that
my
before.
gosh,
That you can feel that temptation of it's a great point, love, because if your reaction to anything sexual is already taboo, the last thing your kid's going to do is bring it to the to the surface, because they're afraid of what's going to happen. Do you think you've mentioned Patrick Carnes a few times? So for those listening, he kind of is the OG of who brought sexual addiction to the forefront. Yes. And as it stands now, there's obviously that book of it's not certifiable diseases, but it's what is it when it's been approved by
the Diagnostic and Statistical
Manual? Is
certifiable diseases. That's what it should be called.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Well, I always said sex addiction had a horrible marketing team.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have anything to do with sex. It has everything to do with trauma.
Right.
I didn't know that until I learned that at rehab. Because
when
you say the word sex addiction, people imagine someone running around town just having a blast.
Yeah.
And then they get caught, sex addict. And then, I want to get back with my wife, so I'm going to say I have a sex addiction. And it's not true. People who really battle this understand sex is the last thing on your mind. It's everything else that's happened.
That's right.
And sometimes the end piece of it looks like that, but it's much deeper than that. Is it now? I guess this is a layered question. The first thing I would say is, isn't it funny? It's just a statement. It's more heroic to say you're a drug addict.
Right.
Way more acceptable
yes.
to say you're an alcoholic.
Yep.
But if you even bring up the word, I'm a sex addict, it's changing now, but it used to be people would be like, "What? That's too much."
Just hide their children.
That's funny to me.
Yeah.
So
Right.
if you're in drugs, a drug recovery program, we're proud of you.
Congratulations.
If you're an
Claps, good on
alcoholic
you.
and you've been
Yeah.
sober for 20 years, we're proud of you. This guy over here who battles some sexual dysfunction, he's an alien.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And do you feel like that's changing now, even in the medical community? What does that look like?
I mean, the academic arguments go on and on. I mean, there is a book called the International Classification of Diseases, and they have recognized compulsive sexual behavior disorder as a bona fide problem. So that is making progress.
Compulsive
sexual behavior disorder.
Okay.
Everybody gets up in arms around this word addiction, which simply means a strong predilection for something. That is the definition of it. So when we say, I'm addicted to my cell phone, not untrue. I'm addicted to chocolate, not untrue.
Yep.
And so it's the nomenclature battles go on and on. But the thinking about sex as an addiction is that these are attractor states in the brain. And there is dopamine seeking, novelty seeking behavior by your own description a little while ago about this cycle.
Yeah.
Always looking for the next higher high, or the intensity is going to get me out of my anxiety, or I'm in despair and I've just got to fire this engine up again.
Yeah.
So it's a running of adrenaline, cortisol, and those neural chemicals are altering the person's state over and over and over again. So that's why it gets thought of as a, quote, addiction in one school of thinking.
You've taught me a lot about the brain. If my situation is similar to others, I'm happy to use it as a petri dish case study, I guess. But when I learned, and I had obviously a drug addiction that fueled some of my sexual brokenness. But what was happening in my brain where I would run so fast and I would go so hard and then I would need to find this valve that was self-sabotage, horrifically high risk, hated it, but it got higher and higher and higher for me.
Right.
And what happens in the brain when that, because I like you said earlier, when people are like, what were you thinking? It's hard to tell people, I'm not sure I was.
You weren't.
I don't even remember making a conscious decision. No. You just feel like this flood of desire to go do something, and all of a sudden you're in a cycle again. What's going on in the brain when someone's seeking high risk, high damage, it's like, it's just so dangerous, they can't stay away from it. What is that?
Well, that is the adrenaline and the dopamine system. That's the reward system constantly. So, our thinking brain, the prefrontal cortex, this big thing we have up here that humans have, is a very slow operating system, and it needs a lot of oxygen. That's why they tell you to put your mask on first in a plane, because a child doesn't need as much oxygen. So that system goes offline when it's flooded like that with novelty. That's why there's no thinking. It's the what they call the slow and accurate route, where you discern something and you make a decision about it. Instead, addicts are running this quick and dirty route. It's going right to the midbrain, and it's all about this high novelty seeking. And dopamine loves novelty, and that is excitatory. It's exciting to go do something new, to meet new people, to buy something new, to go on a new trip.
Yeah.
Right? We're very greedy creatures like that.
Yeah.
But when you get into, again, these are neural networks that when they fire together, they wire together. When you start honing and repeating and practicing that, then you become like a rat with the lever and the cocaine. You just do it over and over and over again until the person implodes eventually.
Yeah. One of my patterns was to put myself in dangerous situations that I could get out of. Because I loved the feeling of danger. And I always could get out until I couldn't.
Right.
And then it got worse and it got worse and it got worse. And I know a lot of people resonate with that, because when I tell people in private, they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm headed down that road." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm over here in the rubble.
Right.
Take an exit off this highway, to pain." I think if we take a right turn briefly, because I know, Lozy, you had some stuff about it all plays together. When there's infidelity, which I hear is painful to go through.
So you read about that?
When there's infidelity and it's all the fault of the wife.
Take that out. You're not allowed to do that.
No, I can now. It's been long enough for me to let people know that I'm sarcastic. We're healthy. If we can laugh about it, you can laugh about it. When there's infidelity and there's an addiction involved, it's very tricky. Because the community of people who are recovering from stuff like this, there's so much carnage when it comes to relationships. What do you tell? Because it's not like if your husband's like, "I have an addiction," it's like, "Okay, cool, we're gonna stay together." How do you help navigate that? You helped us so many times in so many ways in our situations, obviously different than the next person. But if I do feel like that's something that could be misused. So if a husband's like, "I just have an issue," and the wife, how do you help make sense of infidelity in situations where there may or may not be an addiction? Is that too hard of a question?
Well, it's complicated, I'll tell you. And I don't think as a field we really know the answer to that question still, because it's so individual. People are so different. And so the way they handle it is different. And I think it's all based on who you were to begin with and what your trauma was coming into the marriage, how regulated of a person you are when you meet the person that you marry yourself, like how secure was your attachment, each one of you, when you met. And so that's what I see a lot with partners and it's not just with partners. If we just take human beings, if we just take everybody in this room right now, if there was an earthquake, a really serious one, we would all have different levels of reaction. Some people would dissociate, some people wouldn't. Some would some would run out of the building. And this happened during 9/11, where people had different levels of trauma from that based on their regulatory capacities to begin with. So it's not a level playing field by any means. And I think a single incident affair is as painful in the beginning as discovering sex addiction, but I'm not sure it's as devastating over time.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to say, I was bored, I wasn't honest, I cheated, we have relational issues. Not that that's so ho-hum, it's bad.
It's different than
But
years of deception.
Years and years of deception. I mean, I've worked with people who've been married 40 years and find out that their partner had never been faithful ever a day in the 40 years. Because you can speak to this better than any of us, but this idea that my reality was never my reality.
Right.
That I thought I was in this white painted room and the whole time it's been painted red and I didn't know. How could I not know?
Yeah.
What were you?
That's exactly like, I mean, you go to this place of like, what the hell is my life? Like, is any of it real?
Yeah.
Right.
And then I remember you telling me, and my own therapist telling me, like, it was real. Like, what you had was real. But having that, like, actually sink in, that's why I think every person needs therapy when they go through anything like this, infidelity-wise. If you try to do it on your own, I don't know how.
Right. I don't think you can.
I don't think you can either.
I don't think those people really make it through.
Yeah.
They just stay in their trauma and angry their whole lives.
Well,
and
Alex,
that's what I did not want to do that.
Here's the catch-22, though. Here's the catch-22. There'll be a lot of pastors watching, and you can't do that if you're going to lose your job. So there's a lot of people in my old field that, as they're watching right now, they have buried secrets.
Oh, yeah.
And the wife can't get help. He can't tell anybody about it because if he does, he'll lose his job. And so the wife is in that spot of like, how do I get help? You can't, is she going to go to a therapist? Probably not. She's going to tell somebody in the church? Probably not.
Yeah.
No.
So you have these, I've talked to guys who are like, I don't care what happens, I'm going to my grave with that secret. I would have done the same thing if I didn't get caught the way I got caught.
Yeah, but there's no way to not get caught. That's part of the fallacy, right?
Correct.
Yes.
This idea that I won't get
Never
caught.
get caught,
It's
You're gonna
only
get
a
caught.
matter of when.
Hold on, let's take us a brief. If there's like that thing that goes beep when there's like a national security alert, let me just give a huge loving shout out and warning to people that think they're hiding secrets. It's not a matter of if you're going to get caught. It is when. It's not a matter of if it's going to be painful. It's how painful.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I think that's good for people to know because it's not, in not getting caught is almost as painful as getting caught because you're in the cycle. I don't know what's worse, being in the cycle as an addict or having your life crumble and watching all the carnage that you caused because of your addiction.
Yeah.
I don't know which one is worse.
It's hard too because there's this thought like, oh my gosh, I've created so much destruction.
Yeah.
I can't say anything, but every day I don't say something, I'm creating that much more exponential destruction. So coming clean is the best thing a person can do for themselves and for their family.
Right.
Yeah.
And getting caught, I don't think is as bad as being betrayed personally. Because if I'm doing something, if I'm breaking the law and I get caught, it's like, oh, well, I knew I was doing that.
Yeah.
But to be betrayed, to have no idea it was going on, that's a whole different ballgame.
That's a whole different
I think so many people felt betrayed by me.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
100%.
primarily, but there's a lot of other people as a pastor, as a leader, who weren't just mad. They were, I could feel it. Like, I'm sad. Like, you betrayed me. Like, I trusted you.
Yep.
I hung on to your words. I believed you,
Yep.
and you betrayed me.
Yep.
And that's a tough thing to wear. I don't live in the shame of it anymore.
Yeah.
But I'm never going to forget. I'll always be conscious of it. And it's something that we've had to really work through. I think your strength through all this has been, you've done the hard yards. I think there's a level, Alex, I don't know if you, like, it's hard, and everybody at rehab and in our meetings would echo this. To try to get your wife to understand it's not about her is a huge step. Because there are a lot of wives who take it personal and they never get over it. Like, I wasn't pretty enough.
Yeah.
We didn't have good enough sex.
Right.
What did I not do for you? That's like initial, we get that, but you got over that quick. Because I told you, I said, Laura, I don't know how I can get this through to you, but nothing that I did was because of our marriage. We didn't have a bad sex life.
Right.
You've always been there for me.
Right.
You always championed me. You always had my back. You always let me be free. You always were authentic with me. It's not about you.
Yeah,
And
I
there was a
think-
moment where you believed it, because if you didn't
100%.
believe it, you're never going to be able to get over it.
Yeah, you couldn't.
And I think so many women deal with that
Right.
of like, it's about me, and it's really not. But it is such a
It's
hard
hard.
thing to get
I get
through.
it, and I have sympathy and compassion, but it's not about that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you too, like, because I've even had people come to me, like, I know that I should be having more sex with my husband because I don't want them to cheat on me. And I'm like,
Good luck with that.
like, if you think that's what it's about, like, good
You're
luck.
in
Like,
deep trouble.
because that was our story is our marriage wasn't terrible.
Right. Yeah.
And we had a great marriage in terms of like something, but there was things I didn't know, obviously. There was
Yeah.
betrayal that happened that I didn't know. But that is one thing that I wish women would understand. Like, the more things you do to your body, or the more sex you have, or the more things it's not about you.
Yeah.
And I
So-
think that's so hard for women to understand.
Yeah, but that's because there's a missing piece here. So what do you think it says about you that you were able to hear that message and really like, embody it?
Yeah.
I think I have a pretty great self-esteem from the beginning. Like, I
There
had a
you- there
great
you have
dad.
it.
I
Yeah,
had a
you do.
great upbringing where I knew who I was from a
Right.
very, from my teenage years going,
Yeah.
I'm confident in my skin. I
Yeah.
know who I am.
Yeah.
A lot of women don't have that.
That's
and I
right.
know that.
And that is the linchpin, Laura. And that's what I've seen in you from the get-go. It was sort of shocking to me. I thought, is this just what Australian women do?
Yeah. Yeah. 'Cause she is a gangster.
But
yeah.
it
She's
really,
strong.
it was really clear. And even it doesn't mean you didn't have your pain and your moments, but that solid sense of self that your parents gave you, that secure attachment,
Yeah.
that self-esteem, you realized this has nothing to do with
Yeah.
my human beingness, my
Yeah.
sense of self. And a lot of women don't have that.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that struggle the hardest and the most. And they
Yeah.
can't make that separation, that leap that you're talking about.
Yeah, and there's somehow you kept I remember one time you caught me in a lie, and we got in the biggest fight of our marriage, and you had fire in your eyes. You're like, I know what you're doing right now. You're lying to me. I don't care what you say. You're lying. And something changed in our marriage that day, and it was never the same.
Yeah.
Because I had a story, and most of the best lies have shreds of truth in them. So it wasn't all a lie, but you just knew it, and you just put your foot down. And I remember feeling a coldness from that day. And I think now I look back, I think it was God protecting you to a degree,
Yeah.
because you wouldn't. I think you can lose your mind
Yeah.
if someone's lying to you. And I remember almost thanking God on one hand that you hated me and it got cold, because it meant that I hadn't been so bad where you had lost yourself. You had completely lost your faith, completely lost your connection with God. And I remember thinking in my worst state, at least she's strong enough to just not believe me and walk away. Because we know couples who the wife is just like this little
Yeah.
robot, and the
Right.
guy's like a freaking idiot.
Right.
And you're looking at this wife like, are you ever going to do anything or say
Yeah.
anything? And it's also why a lot of wives of our old chapter of friendships, why they didn't want to come around, because
Yeah.
it hit a little bit too close to home.
Yeah.
Sure.
And rather than use our story as a chance to get super honest, people got even safer. Like, let's stay away from them because I don't want our stuff to get exposed. And it was a very interesting conundrum that I saw. But
When she stands up to you like that, what effect does it have on you?
it makes me love her more.
I see that. Yeah.
I think it was also, I could also feel God's presence in it too. Like this, like he hasn't let go of me. Like there's, he's going to save my wife, and I'm not necessarily. This is much harder than I thought. Oh, man, I'm in such a good mood,
This doesn't change the mood.
No, it's funny because we don't. There's no way to talk about this stuff without. You can't be surfacey.
No.
So I think I had an
is-
idea to be try to stay as surfacey as I could, but to get to the root of it, you asked me,
can't.
well, how did it make me feel?
Yeah.
And it was a mixed bag of like, I'm so grateful to God that I have a wife that has her own faith, her own love, her own power, because I in a weird, dysfunctional, sick way, I felt good. She's not I'm gonna die. I'm self-sabotaging. I can't stop myself, but she's gonna be fine.
Right, but something you said is really important to me, that it makes me love her more.
Yeah.
And I bet you respect her more and
Yeah.
find her more attractive
For
than if she
sure.
was just a doormat.
Yeah.
And that is a really important component
Yeah.
to the healing that's taking place here, is
Yeah.
that you're on even footing. And
Yeah.
this kind of vulnerability and intimacy between the two of you, I think, is what makes for eroticism. But we don't have to
100%.
talk about your sex life now. I'm just saying.
No, but I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
I know women that have gone through the same thing, and they don't talk about it with their husbands anymore. Like, it's
Yeah.
not even a
Or their
conversation.
kids.
Or their kids. And I'm like, that makes me so sad,
Yeah.
because there's so much healing that can happen in those conversations when you're at that level of intimacy. And
Yeah.
it brings you closer.
Right.
And I just wish that couples could see that, and
So,
have
Laza,
that
you can attest to
closeness.
this. Like when we parent, specifically me, you've made 4 mistakes in 21 years. Okay, that's fine. But when you parent from a place of failure, the impact is so much greater. Meaning, like, so if I talk to Roman and I'm like, don't look at porn. It's bad. It'll rot your brain, and the devil's gonna come out of that phone and bite you in your face,
Right.
and you're gonna go to hell. When I talked to him from a place of previous failure, going, son, remember that hard season that our family went through, where I hurt mom, hurt everybody. Some of us started with porn when I was your age.
Oh.
So when I tell you, son, do you remember when mom was crying? Remember when we moved 4 times? Remember when I lost my job?
Yeah.
Remember when my friends kind of dipped out on us and you had to carry all that? Remember that? I'm not saying it was because of porn, but I am saying when I was your age, I was looking at that stuff and I didn't know. So when I tell you, please guard your eyes and talk to me if you're feeling tempted, it's because I have failed there. And the way he looks at me and the way he leans in
Right.
is polar opposite to me talking at him.
At him.
Yeah, of course.
And so now, with our whole thing, like we'll sit down with my daughters
Yeah.
and we're talking about the men that they want to be with. And we don't leave out the stuff we've been through. Number one, it's because they were there.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think when you own some of your failures as a parent, that would be my encouragement for other parents. It's like, but try it.
Yeah.
Try it.
Because there's so many parents who are like, I don't want my kid to
lose
change their
respect.
view of
Yeah.
me. They've already changed it.
Yeah.
It's
They
not
know
what you
too
think.
It's changing their view. They don't know you.
Yes.
They don't know you.
Right.
That's
So
awesome. You're exactly
let's
right.
change their
They don't
view
know
of
who you
you.
are.
That's so true.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah.
it's really a powerful thing to say, because that's the truth. My kids, I wanted them to know, I guess what I wanted them to know about me. Like, Dad's strong, Dad's faithful, Dad's a leader. But yeah, the truth is, Dad has brokenness.
That's right.
Dad has failed, but Dad gets up again, and I think there's a different power in that. And you've been awesome with that too. I think that it's been our dedication as a couple. And we've been almost, I wouldn't say too honest, but so honest with our kids that it's like the bond of our family, which is
Yeah.
so true. Like, if you can get through a horrible crisis and work as you get through it, you can get through it better. So we didn't
Yeah.
just like get through it. We're not the same family.
Right.
But the way we sit down and talk, it just feels like we've known each other forever. And it's weird to say because it's your kids, but it's like but there's a rhythm. Right. There's a
but
rhythm
it's
there.
Also, it's a. I'm proud of you for doing that work, because most dads, when they're the ones that have failed, and their kids have, because our kids they do know everything, right? Because they didn't have a choice.
Yeah, they didn't have
unfortunately,
a choice.
But they can be very like specific with things and like talk about it, and he doesn't dumb it down or like try to cover for anyone, or he just lets them have those feelings, which I think you probably helped him with.
Sure,
you did.
That's
I don't know.
Process.
You've given me so many, hardcore prescriptions like a doctor would. Like when I was talking about my kids, you said stop defending people because I would try to soften everything. And there was a period in my recovery where you had enough of my optimism, and you said, hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but every time you finish with some pain, you always go, but it's going to be okay.
Right.
You know what? Just talk about the pain. You don't have to say that. It doesn't make you less of a man of faith. Doesn't make you less of a fighter. Right. And I felt free when you said that, because I was so ingrained to try to, and it's not that that's bad, but you had just said, hey.
Yeah, I think I said you always walk on the sunny side of the street.
Yes, and there's rain on your face.
I love that, though. I love that you said that to him.
Well, it's a beautiful quality that you have, but it's problematic because where's the shadow?
Where's the rain?
Where's the rain, right? Where are the other colors?
Well, I mean, most of the people in our world, that world that we're from, that's how you are. You're like, you say your thing, like, oh, I'm kind of struggling, but it's going to be okay. And it's like, instead of sitting in those feelings and feeling the way you feel, that's what I had to learn. That was my journey.
We had a 9-hour fight that started last night.
Yeah.
Went all the way through to the airport.
This morning.
And and we talked through the entire fight. Like it was very funny, because I'm like, I'm not doing a good job of hearing you because I'm annoyed. And she would say something bad, but it was like a falling forward fight. Like we're gonna get there quickly. And we got there, we shook hands, literally shook hands. I said, let's start over.
Right.
My bad. I was annoyed, but I have to be there for you when you feel like you're having a bad day.
Yeah.
We used to have a deal back in the day. We're never gonna have a bad day on the same day. That's the only way we survive. Because if our kids would sometimes look at us during that season and be like, are we gonna make it? And we'd be like, are you gonna fake it today? Because our kids need to see somebody that's gonna survive.
I'm not getting out of bed today. I'm staying in my bed.
You were in bed yesterday. I'm gonna be depressed today. No, but there was just this, there's a cool rhythm you can develop that I guess it comes back to being honest.
It's honesty.
And transparent, to be able to say, like to tell you why I'm frustrated is new. Never would do that.
No.
To tell
and
you,
I wouldn't tell you either that you're annoying me.
Yeah.
Or like you're not valid. Like I feel like I can't tell you how I'm
it was
feeling.
beautiful when you said that today. Yeah.
And which makes me shut down.
Yeah.
Because if you have more patience for other people with their bad days than you do for me, I shut down. I don't feel validated.
Well, you
then
said
I'm going to be
you
like,
actually
F
said you
like,
didn't
I'm
say
done.
if. You said you have more patience with other people than you do with me, and it crushed me because that's my goal is the opposite.
Right.
And I think you dealt with that for a long time, and that's a symptom of being a pastor.
Yep.
Is that you have more grace
for everyone
for the crack addict and the criminal and this guy than you do for your own house.
Sure.
It's just humanity.
Well, it's a therapist's occupational hazard also to come home at the end of the day and say, do not speak to me.
Right.
I don't want to hear anybody's problem.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
I can't even imagine.
It's similar, though.
Yeah.
It's similar to what you're saying.
Yeah.
But back to the infidelity part, like what
Gotta
is
go
it?
back, do we?
Yes.
Great.
No, just for the wives that like maybe there has been infidelity or they kind of think there might be something. Like what is a woman's role in that space? Like how do you, because I know like for any person that's addicted to anything, like if you confront them and say, hey, I think you have this issue, or they're just going to be like, they're going to gaslight you.
They're going to get defensive.
They're going to get defensive.
Right.
So what does a woman do when they know something's not right? How do they deal with that? Like, do you just sit and take it until it comes out and it's exposed? Or
no,
like...
I think it goes back to this truth-telling that we're talking about, to say, I don't know what's not working for me in this marriage. It may be me. It may be my inability to tolerate that you're
Yeah.
never home or that you're short with me because that's your personality. Like, you do you, but
Yeah.
whatever you're doing over there is not working for me.
Yeah.
And I have to be honest with myself about that. And I think women, I think we're socialized in a particular way. I think some of it is gender biologically oriented, where we will look the other way for the good of the whole, the good of the family.
Yeah.
And we can gaslight ourselves. I mean, deception begins
Wow.
with self-deception often.
Yeah.
That it's not that bad, or at least he's
Right.
providing, or, as opposed to say. And also,
Yeah,
it's
good.
far more painful for me to pick up and leave than it is to stay and tolerate the known.
That is
That's
so
the piece of it.
true.
It's too much work to leave.
That's right. It's more painful to leave
Let me
than
settle.
to
for
stay.
the kids and for
That's
me.
right.
Yeah, all of it.
And oftentimes, which you will attest to also, is that when you're married for a long time, your life gets bigger than your marriage.
Yeah.
Yep.
The life is big. You had 3 children. You're embedded in this big community,
Yeah.
friends, social obligations. It's not like, I think my husband's kind of a pain or I'm sick of him and I'm leaving.
Right.
And you live, you have no children and you live in some tiny little town where nobody knows you.
Yeah.
It's not like
Yeah.
that. It's far reaching when you make a move.
This is interesting. I think with shame, and this is if you're a husband that's doing dirt, you might want to get your wife away from the podcast. But I have found a link to controlling, mean, snappy husbands. It's in my experience with helping men through it, and in my own life, it's because they're mad at themselves.
You
and
bet.
the only person they can
100%.
shoot at is this beautiful, faithful woman.
Right.
And I know there are times in our marriage where I'll be so snappy with Laura because in my head, I hate myself. I hate what I'm doing. And it comes out as a snap. And so in a marriage, when you see a lot of snappiness, for the wife, it should be a triple red flag.
Right.
Yep.
Because
That
there's
is
something
shame.
going on in there.
Shame, right?
Shame is causing that. Can you talk
sure.
about the shame factor?
Yeah.
Because there's people who talk about it, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, but you've never walked. You're reading a book on it. It's a current topic right now, but it's different than what we have walked through and what you've taught me about it. But yeah, the shame component is huge.
Well, that shame also, when somebody is cheating or lying or betraying and they're blowing their shame through their partner, it's a way to create separation from the partner, too.
Did you say blowing their shape?
Shame.
Shame.
Yeah, through their partner.
Yeah.
The snappiness.
Yeah, yeah.
And it creates separation. Don't get too close to me. Don't love me. Because there's an internal sense of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough. And so I can't really take in any love, affection, any goodness from you because I can't really even make eye contact with you because I'm so ashamed of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So it serves multiple purposes. One, it keeps the addiction swaddled and compartmentalized. And the other, it creates distance so that you don't think there's something wrong with me. I can make it about
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You're imagining things. Leave me alone. It's not that big of a deal. Look how hard I'm working. There's a real victim mentality that can accompany that also
Yeah.
on the part of the liar, actually.
Wow.
So shame is a barrier affect. It doesn't allow any other feeling to come to the surface.
Wow.
No joy, no happy, mad, sad, glad. It's just, you just leave me alone. I'm in a one-person system over here. Because I have a whole double life that you don't
Yeah.
know about.
Beautiful point, because it took me a while to understand what a real win was, because I feel like most of my adult life, and we had some huge wins professionally, church-wise, but I never really knew what it was like to really celebrate anything because of my own shame. So whether it was everybody else is celebrating, and I would have been maybe a 7 out of 10. If 10 is all celebration, I never got above a 7 because I always felt, so I never really enjoyed
Yeah, you
life.
never had joy.
Now I have to remind myself, like, I actually love today.
Oh, I
because
love
there's no other foot dropping.
Right. Yeah,
and to people who live with shame and hidden secrets, I like to say, as hard as it's going to be to get out, so much better on the other side. Because you don't know what it's like to live free. You just
Yeah.
don't. And to me, that's been a huge part of this season, is going like, hey, I'm in a good mood today, and it's okay.
Yeah.
I'm proud of what happened. I'm proud of this. This was a good win. But to be able to do that was completely foreign to me.
Do you think you can ever trust. Is there a place? Hang on. How do
Once
I
a
say
cheater,
this?
always a
Yes.
cheater.
So I had that comment a lot. Watch yourself. Be careful. Like on DMs or whatever.
Sure.
Anything I put up, they always say that. Guard your heart. Keep him away. Like once a cheater, always a cheater. I just have a hard time with that saying. It's been around forever.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I feel like that saying alone, there's no room for change in a person.
That's right. And there's no room for redemption. And if somebody is not doing the work they need to do, once a cheater, always a cheater.
Exactly.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Exactly.
Well, if I
like-
stop doing the work,
I'm out.
It's not a question of if.
Right,
It'll be
that's right.
how bad will I go backwards?
Exactly.
It's not a life of I've made it. I think it could be a symptom of our Christian faith where we have kind of levels of growth. Recovery of stuff like this, and even if you haven't gone through it, the truth is to manage your sexuality, you never arrive. You have to. It's like working on a beautiful
time.
garden.
All the
and
time, yeah.
So there will never be a day where if she looks at me and I'm not doing some sort of work on this, it's going to be a problem because it has to be constant. It's
Right.
real.
But one of the sort of weird, I guess, ironies of any kind of recovery from any kind of addiction is that it becomes a path of spiritual growth and development, unlike anything else. And it's generative.
So true.
It's a lifelong
Yeah.
process. And when you get a taste of what it means to be on a path of spiritual growth and development, of potential, it's infinite,
Yes.
right? And it's delicious. And life becomes widely curious. And we want to explore different aspects of ourselves because these vitality states are alive. They're no longer disconnected and dead internally. So there is an exuberance about getting up every day and saying, what's in store today?
Yeah.
And who will I be tomorrow?
Yeah.
And how's my sexuality going to change from decade to decade?
Yeah.
Or my relationships.
Yeah.
So it's the model for recovery is a generative model. It's not a model of stagnation, like now you stop drinking and you're done.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, I'm
exactly.
sober.
There's an old AA saying of just put the plug in the jug. Well, that's a dry drunk.
Yeah.
Right?
well,
Dry
yeah.
drunk.
But it's not about the drinking.
Yeah.
It's about your character and all the horrible things you did and all the ways you're making a living amends today to right those wrongs. Because you can't undo what you did,
Yeah.
but you can give service the way you're giving service right here today in order to make restitution.
You know, recovery guys get it. There are some other people who maybe don't get it. Like we're doing this. I'm doing this, even this podcast endeavor, because it's part of my amends. It's a
Yeah.
living amends. And I had a public life. And so my amends have to somehow flow into a public way.
That's right.
Or it's uneven. It's not fair.
Yeah.
So some people are like, oh, is it spotlight? Do you want to be back in? And it's like, no, you don't get it. Like I have a responsibility to bring this pain to the public forum for whoever wants it. And because that's how you make amends. It's alive. It's living amends.
Right.
It's
So
not
there's
like
a-
something you check off.
Yeah.
Every day I do this. Every day I bring up embarrassing things is another day I go, I'm doing my job.
Yeah, there's a social justice component
Yeah.
to what you're saying
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
It's like giving service or cleaning up the freeway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah.
just a different way of doing that.
So if someone were to say, you should never touch a microphone again and you should never do anything in public, I would say to people like that, yeah, that might be good for you. It's not good for me.
Right.
I have to do what I feel called to do. And this is the best way I can help people we don't necessarily choose the lane God gives us.
No.
But when you find it, you got to ride in that thing. And this is ours. It's always been ours. It's
Right.
not like we ever woke up and we're like, we want to be people at the forefront. It just happens.
Yeah.
And it doesn't change because you fall. Redemption in public, it feels different and it looks different. And we don't like to see it. Our society loves the rise, loves the fall.
Loves the cancel.
Loves the
Everybody-
Loves the cancel.
Everybody's on
You're
the
right.
fence with
Yeah.
redemption. And what's good news about redemption is God's not on the fence about it. So our culture, they might be cancel this, cancel that, but it's cool to be able to look at other men and say, hey, forget about that. Like, who cares about that anyway? You can start fresh. You can be different. There can be redemption for you.
Right. And in some ways, Carl, I wonder if this is not really your true voice. That the voice that you had previously was maybe a less mature voice. I'm not saying it didn't mean anything to you and it wasn't
Yeah,
true,
yeah.
but this is you now finding a much more mature voice, and really being on a path of wisdom.
Wow.
And that's a beautiful thing. And it's unfortunate that the bottom had to fall out.
Yeah.
But it is indeed a hero's journey, this journey of recovery. You know, we come back from whence we came, but completely changed and the same also.
Yeah.
You know, I'm reminded of, I didn't know the definition of shame until the way you told me. Shame actually is more to do with what you feel other people are thinking. And in that ballpark, I don't think it's exactly how you said it, but shame is like people think I'm horrible, I'm embarrassed.
I'm a bad person.
I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
When you get through that, guilt in some ways is better than shame. Like not the worst kind of guilt, but I'm saying like when you feel convicted because you're wrong,
right,
and you want to make amends, that's different than shame. You got to get through that thing where it's like, I don't live in shame today. Like there's going to be people who don't want to hear what I have to say. There might be someone who's mad at me. It's like, cool, but I'm not going back that way.
Right.
Because what you think about me is none of my business.
Right.
And I can't control it. I spent my whole life trying to control what people think about me, and it never worked. And it sure as shit ain't going to work now, which we'll bleep that out. But I love that feeling of being able to push shame aside, and it's a better life. But you got to get through that one moment.
Yeah, I mean, there is toxic shame and healthy shame also, but that toxic shame is collapsing and it's vile.
Yeah.
It really is problematic because it's deep in the gut and deep in the body. And it's really embedded in human beings as a pro-social function.
Yeah.
Right? We don't do things. I'm not going to leave here and go bash in the neighbor's windshield with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
Right? Because that wouldn't be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So we have to have healthy shame about how we behave in the world.
Yes.
But constantly collapsing into I'm a horrible human being doesn't get anybody anywhere.
If clinically this is going to be cool for you to speak to, when I got out of part of my rehab journey, I came across one of my friends, really great Christian guy, love him. And I was telling him my story. I was like, you know, as an addict, and he goes, hey, I got to stop you there. You are not an addict. You are a child of God. And I'm like, bro, I know that, okay? Right. I get that. He's like, no. Whoever told you have to say that, you are a child of the Most High. I'm like, listen, I love you. I get it. Me saying I'm an addict is not me rejecting my God titles and the labels that Jesus has put on me. It's good for people who are not in this world to understand when an addict says that, all it is a moment of reverent sobriety about who you are.
That's right.
So when I say, hey, I'm an addict, I'm a recovering addict, it's not because I identify with an addict. It's me letting you know I'm always this close.
And I take responsibility.
And I take responsibility for
right.
it. I'm an addict. I can't do that.
Right.
I'm an addict, so I won't go there. So for all the well-meaning Christians, go easy on people in recovery circles that are going to say, I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
That's okay for them to say that.
Yes.
It doesn't mean they're rejecting what God has said about them. So let's stop doing that.
That's good.
Because there's people who feel shame about that. And you go into some churches, they're like, don't you say that. It's like, well, go to a different church.
Right.
Because that's not healthy. But but maybe it'll help give context. I don't think everybody's evil with their motive with that. But I had to explain to that guy, I'm like, no, it's not a label that I'm like drinking.
Yeah.
It's a reality check that I'm on the doorstep and I'm going to work at this because I know what I'm capable of, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first step, is admitting that I have a problem.
Yes.
To saying I am an alcoholic, a drug addict, a sex addict. That is the first step of surrender, as opposed to hiding that I have this problem.
Yeah.
But you're right, it does not mean that you have to wear that mantle the rest of your life in this heavy way.
No, I often use, when I check in on our meetings, sometimes I say I'm an addict, other times I say I'm a recovering addict.
That's
It just
right.
depends on how I feel.
Yeah.
There's no rule to that. It just is how sometimes people can find strength in that moment to say, oh, okay, cool, I'm an addict.
But it's also a good reminder, like you said, every day when I walk out of my door, am I walking out intentionally? Do I know where I can and can't go and do and not do?
It becomes strength.
Yes, because I have limitations.
I can't do that. You can do that. I'm an addict, so I can't do that.
That's
I'm
right.
going to go home early.
Right.
You don't have to. That's not your standard.
That's right.
But, so if I'm walking around like I'm good, I'm healed, I'm not an addict, I'm a child of God.
Yeah.
To me, that's stupid.
That's a problem.
It's
right?
stupid. So I think sometimes we get ahead of ourselves, with our well-meaning Christianity. I can only speak for myself. I've been there. But I like that that definition of being able to put yourself in a spot where you just admit who you are because you know you're going to continue to work at it.
Yeah.
You were going to ask something right before I hopped in there. We got about 5 more hot ones for Alex.
I have so many thoughts.
Until Alex hits the
fire.
button.
Yeah, right. Do you think you can trust again, or like trust even greater than before the betrayal?
You know, that's...
Or at the beginning of a betrayal, like when you find out,
Sure.
and you're like everything's shattered.
Yes.
Like, what do you think?
I do think that people can learn to trust again, but I think, trust and safety are sort of moment-to-moment negotiations.
Yeah.
It's not a foregone conclusion.
Moment to
I mean,
moment.
you guys have dogs, right? And you have a puppy.
Yep.
And so sometimes you're probably sitting in a room going, okay, what is he doing? Right? I got to go check because I don't really trust him.
Yes.
Right.
But that doesn't mean you don't love him
Yeah.
and that he's not doing the best he can, but he's a puppy. So trust, I think about trust as an ongoing negotiation.
Yeah.
And this is where we're sort of lazy as a culture. We just think that we get married and live happily ever after. And it's like, but we're changing so rapidly all the time.
Yeah.
Right? We're
Yeah.
changing our, the style of jeans we wear and our hair and like everything all the time. But we don't think to change and update our relationship. Like, who are you? We've been married 5 years, 10 years, 20 years.
Yeah.
Who are you today?
Right.
Because I don't even know who I am on any given day.
Yes.
So trusting is, I think, an important ongoing conversation.
Yeah.
And my guess is you would say that it's a feeling for you, right?
Yep.
There's no book that's going to tell you about how to trust.
No.
Right.
You really can't.
I mean, we had the biggest victory in the past little chapter for us was when I asked you, which we have a habit of doing, how can I make you feel safer?
Yep.
How can I make you feel more secure? And you go, I can't remember the last time I didn't trust you.
Yeah.
And it was like the highlight of my life thus
Yeah.
far. Because I was
Wow.
like, that's...
Which
She
is
had
massive.
to dig to find something that wasn't making her feel safe. And I was like, don't dig. That's cool. I accept it.
Stop there.
I accept it. I accept
But that
it.
could change also tomorrow.
Yeah,
You
well,
know, like,
yeah, but
there's
you're
still
just-
triggers. There's things that I still have to deal with.
But this is another thing about you, though, that I hope maybe more women can see in you. You are a trigger seeker.
Yeah.
For instance, we can run from New York City or we can go back and make new memories. She's a new memory girl. She refuses to get robbed. So it's not
That's
that it's not a
great.
trigger. Like
Yeah.
we're both walking around New York like this half the time, like it's like a walking trigger. But you have always ran to them and you get over them.
Yeah.
And I think some people live in fear and they use it as a badge. They use it as a buffer. Like, that's a trigger for me.
That's a trigger for me. I can't do that.
Cool. And you can't say anything. Once a person says that, you
Yeah.
got to take your hands off. And what I love about you, though, and there are some things that are like that.
Right.
But the
100%.
majority of the time, though, you're like, you know what? It is a trigger, but screw that. Let's go.
But
Let's
I
do
think
this.
a trigger loses power sometimes when you talk about it with
For
the
sure.
person
Right.
that the trigger, like
Yeah.
where there's the triggering is happening,
Yeah.
It's like, hey, this is a trigger, just so you know. And it kind of, when it's out of my head,
Yeah.
I find that it's just so freeing.
It's
Yeah.
gone then, right?
It's
No
gone.
longer
Like there's
activating.
it's not like ticking over in my head by myself and it just getting worse and worse.
Right.
Yeah, this is funny. I remember in the job of the husband, I could speak to all my brethren out there who have broken vows, and you trying to reclaim trust. Your job is to just not take it personal, because there was a moment where and I get to bring this stuff to my therapy. So for those who don't have that option, please find it, because I'm able to
Please.
take it there first before I go here, and before it goes here, I'm going to take it to Alex and my trusted guys, and we're going to pick it apart, and we're going to talk about it before it gets wild. But what was I going to say? What was
Triggers.
Triggers.
it was right before that. Oh yeah. So sometimes you could take it personal, and I decided not to do that. One day we're driving, it was completely quiet, and you look over and I was like, "Why do you look mad at me?" She's like, "I am mad." And I'm like, I haven't done anything. I'm not saying anything. She goes, and this is a trigger. I'm like, me sitting here, not talking
Yes.
is a trigger? Yes. And I went, okay, good to know. I'm literally existing.
That's right.
And I'm triggering you. And she
You
said,
just
yeah,
never
because
know.
you
Like,
used to live in that head
Yes.
and devise ways to lie. And you had other things going on and you would never tell me about it. And I went, yeah, I get that. But it just was funny because I literally didn't do anything.
just-
I'm just sitting
Just
there.
sitting
Yeah,
there.
you
And she just
the
had
sound
this.
of your breathing.
Yeah, just
she
like
just
you're
had this
there.
funky look, and I'm like, "What did I do today?" You know, and in the past, I would have been. I'm not perfect with this. There are days where I react to it, but most of the time, I'm able to just take it on the chin and
Yeah.
go, "Okay, that's cool." There's some days where I want to go, but I like that. I like that journey we've been on with that. It becomes easier and easier if my goal is to make you
Yeah.
feel like
Right.
there's trust.
Right.
Along those lines of triggers sexually, how do you like get intimate with someone again?
That is the most confounding part of this, is that the person that's the perpetrator is also the person you most need
To heal.
to heal.
Yeah.
And so it's that moment. I don't know if you remember that movie Crash.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember that
Yeah.
scene where who was the actor again? Not Matt
There's
Damon.
a bunch of them in
Yeah,
there. Matt Dillon. was
Matt
in
Dillon.
it?
It was
Yeah.
Matt Dillon. He was a cop. And in a previous scene, he had violated an African American woman, stopped her husband for speeding,
Yeah.
touched her inappropriately. It was just a gross scene, right?
Yeah.
Several scenes later, there's a car accident and there's a woman pinned under a car and gasoline's dripping. And a cop comes to rescue her and she looks up and the man reaching for her is the man, it was Matt Dillon. He's the man who had violated her. And you feel the unbelievable dissonance in that moment. The guy who assaulted her is now going to rescue her. Is she going to take his hand or isn't she? She needs him in that moment. And it's a horrible bind. And that is the bind that you are expressing here.
Yeah.
You know, I love you. My whole system is dysregulated
Yeah.
and in a fear state, a terror state, but I also need you to calm me down.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you basically
it's
told
so
me in a very
crazy.
loving, Alexy way, suck it up.
Suck it up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you suck it up. And that was a tough thing to get over. It was tough.
Yeah, but
But
those
yeah.
are the moments of healing that
Yeah.
are so painful and poignant at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those are trust building moments
Trust.
also.
Yeah. They
I
are.
mean, how do
Strangely.
you, I mean, we've chosen to relate to things so differently in the last 2-3 years for sure. And now we look at moments like that and the way we relate to it is it made us better.
Yeah.
And you know, our fight yesterday was like, did we waste time? Shoot. Did we waste time? Or did it become something that we learned so that off the back of that fight, we knew each other better? And so I think that's a huge deal. Even how you relate to the infidelity in your marriage, it's huge. It
Yeah.
can be the worst thing that ever happened because there's truth to that. It can also be the thing that set you free and gave you a new lease on honesty in life
Yeah.
that you don't even recognize.
The other thing that's standing out to me here that speaks to how much you've healed is that it was our experience. It's not just you did this and you did that and I'm destroyed because of that. There was a time for that. But the way you talk about it is that this is what we went through. This was our problem. And
Yeah.
that's a bridge that a lot of partners can't cross either.
Well, yeah, I've seen that as well in
Yep.
a lot. Like it's the pointing fingers, which
Yeah.
there is a time for that.
Yes.
Absolutely. But then you also have to take some sort of ownership for your own healing and your own journey, and then coming together to do that as well together is a massive
Yeah.
moment. But again, I don't know how people do it without talking to someone or having therapy or like,
I don't know how they do. I don't think they do.
yeah, because I know some women who are like, I could never have sex with that man or my husband
Yeah,
again.
again.
Right.
And
Then
that's
you-
okay, I guess.
But then you shouldn't stay in
then
that
you don't
marriage.
stay, right?
And that's part of what happens also is that a lot of women are just so angry,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't leave.
And that's what I don't understand. Like
Yeah.
either just friggin' do your
Yeah.
work and
Right.
like heal together, or get out and
That's right.
It's a
be
tough
happy.
one.
Like
Yeah.
it's so
Because
it's
Alex, the
frustrating.
technical answer, because we have a friend who was going through something similar. And he's like, "How long am I supposed to be the whipping boy? I mean,
Don't-
how long?" And the correct answer is however long it takes.
Right.
But they're also we're
But,
both looking
yeah.
at it going, "She's awful.
still 20 years of
She's
this? Yeah.
terrible."
That's right.
And there
it's-
has to be some buy-in on the other side, or else Like, I don't know. I've seen it too many times and it breaks my heart because you're right. Just go. It's better to go.
Yeah, I mean, look, we all get one life and we get to design
Yes.
it and do it any way we want. And we can torture ourselves for the duration or we can look for freedom and happiness wherever we're going to find it. But I think that's one of the challenges also in our humanity is to be able to hold space for people wherever they're at.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get incredulous and say, why don't you just leave? But again, you know what it's like to have 3 children and a whole thing. And it's just not that easy sometimes.
It's really not, which is why I chose to do the work.
That's
as
why
well,
a lot
you
of
know?
women
It's like,
stay and do the work. They stay. I've had many women tell me over the years, they stayed because of their children. They did the work and they're really glad they did.
Yeah, 100%.
Because their marriages are so much better
So much
and stronger.
better.
Well, Alex, they tell you very lovingly at Gentle Path. Gentle Path is the rehab that I went to in Arizona. They say, stop trying to save your marriage. If you're trying to save your marriage, this is the wrong place.
That's right.
Yeah.
You need to fix your life.
Yeah.
If you do that, there's good hope for your marriage. But if you get caught or you fall on your face and your biggest driving force is I want to get my marriage right, it'll never work.
That's
because
right.
you can get that right and still be broken.
Well, and be manipulative because you're trying to get it
Yes.
right. That is
Yes.
not changing you.
It's not changing. So the best advice was you got to do your own work.
Yep.
You go your way, I'm going to go my way. And let's see, because I actually asked you some very hard questions like, am I able to be in a monogamous relationship? Am I so broken it can never happen? I want to leave my family. I want to leave her because I don't want to do this again. And you said, be sober for X amount of time, and then let's have that conversation. And we never had the combo.
I think it was, can we not talk about this for a year?
Yes, because I was like, I'm ready to go. I've caused too much pain. I don't think I can be in a marriage and be faithful. I really don't. I think there's too much that's happened. And you said, let's let the program work. Let's see what happens when you put the work in, and then let's have that combo. And we never had it again. Yeah.
Wow.
I remember that conversation.
Yeah. That's great. Okay, we can let me get 10 more minutes out of you.
Sure.
Got it? Okay, so off the back of our situation, I was willing to be anything. I was willing to be whatever somebody called me. And there was a point where someone had called me a narcissist. And I remember asking you, I said, Alex, if I'm a narcissist, I'll accept it. I don't know if I am. So I present you my life. Someone's accused me of this. Am I a narcissist? If I am, and you really helped me work out what was my situation and what narcissism was and who I was.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what true narcissism is?
That word is really thrown around a lot
Sure is.
these days.
But it's like people saying you're bipolar.
Yeah.
It's a disorder.
Or that's insane.
It's a disorder.
Yeah.
Right. Those shoes are insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So narcissism is actually thought of as a personality structure. And let me just go back and say, around 3 years old, that is considered the narcissistic stage of toddlerhood. So think about your 3-year-olds,
Yeah.
right? It's all about me.
All about, yeah.
Mommy, look at me. Daddy, look at me. It's me, 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 me.
Yep.
And that is a developmental stage where the parent's job is to say, you're amazing,
Yeah.
or you did a great job, or yay, I'm so proud of you. And the child is internalizing that they are good.
Yeah.
That's also dopamine tone, by the way. It's a healthy serotonin system. So the child is coming to fruition because the parent is imbuing them with these structures that say you are a worthy, valid human being that deserves to walk in this world. And if a child doesn't get that at that age, then you got a 30-year-old saying, look at me, me, me.
Wow.
Right? And that becomes the narcissistic personality over time. And the phrase in Alcoholics Anonymous is king baby, where it's all about me. There's a selfishness that goes with that in adulthood when it doesn't get appropriately managed in toddlerhood. So if somebody has a narcissistic personality disorder, they are cruel. These are cruel people. They have no empathy. And everything is organized and manipulative in a pretty malignant way towards getting everything they want and need, and everything in life is self-serving and it's about them, right? So that is not a usual configuration. That's a highly problematic configuration.
Yeah.
Most people that are recovering from sex addiction have what we call narcissistic traits. They were wounded at that 3 and 4 year old age. Where they just weren't seen and weren't tended to in a contingent, loving way. And it may be because they grew up in a family that was so big, their mother was beleaguered, or they were busy, giving service to everybody else, and they thought their kids were just fine because they had a roof over their head and their parents loved them. So, and every child's temperament is different. Right? Some need more of that than others. So it all goes back to these patterns that we get in childhood and our ability to manage ourselves. So to say you have narcissistic traits, yes. Both of you, myself included, have a healthy narcissism, or we wouldn't have the success that we have. We wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
So narcissism is not a bad thing. It's problematic when it is a malignant. I'll just say it like that.
Yeah, it's similar to the word ego. Like, ego's bad, yes and no. Like, you have to have some sort of confidence to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and say, I'm going to do this.
Right, but you also have to have humility with that. If you're just egotistical with no humility, nobody really wants to be around that person.
I think that when you have a big leadership role, there's so many things that look so like they funnel into a narcissistic life that it's hard for people to say, no, it's like, it's not narcissism. It's having a life where you're at the top of the totem pole and you can develop narcissistic traits. You taught me that first step of like, sometimes true narcissism is just being freaking selfish.
That's right.
We all have tinges of
back to
like
addiction as well.
Selfishness is the bedrock of addiction.
Right.
So it's like, am I a narcissist? No. Do I, like many people perhaps, struggle with narcissistic ideas and tendencies? Yeah. That's called humanity as well.
Right. And I think when you're in a leadership role like you were, people foment that. They want you to be bigger than life and more. And it's hard not to take that energy on and start to forget actually who you really are. That you're a mere mortal. You knew you were just hiding all of that. So that's really how I make that distinction.
Okay. I think we can give you a break, let you off the witness stand. I will say, I just want to thank you for, like, on behalf of so many men like me especially, that probably can't sit here and say thank you. Your life's work has impacted, so many families like mine. Like, my family's different because of the hard work you put in for so long to be able to, who knows the sacrifices you've had, who knows what the pioneering road as a woman in this field has looked like, but thank God you did it. And there's so many people like me. You only in heaven will you see some of the impact that you've had. But today here, it's cool for me to be able to look at you and say thank you.
Well, I'm deeply grateful to have also been, had a sort of ringside seat to your journey as well. It's deeply gratifying for me. That's why I do the work I do. So thank you.
Thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for being here today.